Well, hey folks, my name is Brad, and today I have hiked quite a ways up into the mountains of Vermont, and I brought my metal detector because right behind me is an old stone foundation from the end of the 1700s. Now, for me personally, it's been a while since I've had the opportunity to metal detect a place this old, so I'm really looking forward to finding some cool old colonial treasures today. Now, if this is one of my first videos that you've seen, I post one of these every single Friday. So if you like what you see today, consider subscribing or just come on back next week. I'm gonna get started, see what we can find here. Well, in some of my last videos, the audience has shown a lot of interest in wanting to see more of the process, more of the metal detecting, more of the actual digging and retrieval of the object. So just over there, I had a very nice target. It was like an 88. Got all the cameras set up, dug it on camera, and it ended up being a modern bullet. It's a bullet. And that's why I don't do a ton of live digs, as folks on YouTube call them, because it's just so much work getting the cameras out and turned on and set up and tuned in, and then it ends up being garbage and put them back away again. Anyway, I just got another nice target, not too far away from that bullet. I said, you're not fooling me again. Opened up the plug, and it's something pretty cool. Maybe you can see down in the hole. It is a massive, baseball-sized jingle bell. Crotal bell, sleigh bell. I'm not sure this would be considered a sleigh bell because of how huge it is, but enormous. We can see by the way it's shaped here, it likely was stepped on that way, crushed in half. The other piece might be around here somewhere, but this is a big enough piece where I can display it and you can't even tell it's broken. So awesome. I've only been lucky enough to find one this big in my life metal detecting, and they're really something special because of how loud they are. It looks like this one doesn't have a whole lot of decoration on it. Sometimes they have these cast-in pedals down at the bottom, but this seems just like a very utilitarian farmer's jingle bell. If they lost one, maybe they lost more, and I'll be able to find a complete one today. We'll see. Giant jingle bell, so cool. Well, for folks who might be new to my videos or just metal detecting videos in general, folks that were living at this time, the beginning of the 1800s, end of the 1700s, they were, for the most part, wearing metal buttons, and we find a ton of them, especially at places like this. I'll usually walk away with a dozen or so at each place. And they're all slightly different. Most of these are actually made out of brass, but you can see that they vary in size and slightly different from button to button. You can see this one has a bunch of gold plating on the back, and we call these flat buttons for obvious reasons, right? They're totally flat. But I just found kind of an interesting one, kind of an uncommon one. You can see this one has a bit of a dome shape to it, and it also has a design on it, which whenever we find one of these, we're hoping military. I believe it's just flowers. See if I can get that scale off there and get to the bottom of it. That's always a bit of a heart stopper when you find a button this shape. It appears as though there's something on it. We hope military, but not always. Sometimes they're just a very pretty ladies button, which I think this one probably is, but I'll have to get back to you on that one. And the forest is absolutely pin drop quiet today for some reason. No birds, no wind. I hear a deer fly buzzing around my head, but that's about it. All right, well, let's make some racket with our metal detector and our shovel. All right. This target is a 90 on my metal detector. It could be a big brass button, it could be a brass buckle, it could be a coin, I hope. It's been a long time since I've had a really nice target. Been digging a lot of old junk. Let's see how deep it is. We're going to try it with our pinpointer first. And I do just get just a faint signal right there. So that's going to be the middle of my plug. There's a rock. Okay, here it is. Certainly is coin sized. And judging by where we are, how old the other things are here, I have to assume it's fairly old. All right, well, hopefully you can see there is the left-facing bust of what I believe is a British king, and then on this side, the sitting Britannia. She has her trident and a shield down here. It's hard to make out. The coin does not have any dirt on it anymore, but you can see this brown is actually a corrosion of the copper. And we might be able to clean that up a little bit with some chemicals when we get home, but generally I don't even attempt. I just leave it as it is. I don't actually know which British coin this is, which king it is, if it's George II or George III. I know it's not George I, so I'm going to have to do some research on this. When I get home, I'll show a picture of it as cleaned up as I can get it. Man, what a surprise. If it was any later in the day, I would say this is a great note to end on, but we have some time left, so let's see what else we can find here. I'm not sure anything is going to top that, unless we find another one. We'll have to wait and see. Seems like there's a lot of farm items today, which makes sense. We're on a farm. These folks were working day in and out doing farm things. So we're finding lots of farm items. This is no exception, I think. This is a piece of very, very thin brass. And when I first pulled it out, I thought that it was just going to be junk. But taking a closer look, we can see it's just covered with filigree designs. There's little leaves, maybe berries. And unfortunately, I think that it's fairly well broken and deteriorated around the edges. If we look on the back, we have white lead and some iron, which would have likely all been part of the same thing here. Honestly, it could be anything, but what I'm fairly certain it is, because of the lead and the iron on the back, is a horse bridle rosette. It would have been part of a horse's bridle, up at a point where a couple straps come together, and it would keep it all nice and tidy and be a pretty little design. And they don't show up this pretty very often. They're usually just kind of these flat blank discs. This one would have been very, very nice. We know what it is. We can imagine what it would have looked like when it was new, and I'm grateful to have found it. All right, well, let's keep on searching and see what else we can find here. So for folks who might not be super familiar with how a metal detector works, you have the ability to filter out certain metals, and most times, most people will filter out the iron so that you're not digging nails all day and just kind of concentrate on coins. I do that all the time depending on where I am, but you know, based on how old this place is, I love finding handmade iron objects. So I'm trying to find it all today, and I just found a very peculiar find. It actually sounded very good on the metal detector. I wasn't positive it was iron, probably because of the loop right here and right here. But as I pulled this out, it was actually two pieces. I don't know if they were intended to be together or what, but this appears to be an iron buckle. And the thing that strikes me is the pin is forked, similar to like a shoe buckle. And this, I have no idea. It almost resembles like a pot hanger for over a fire, but I guess this side must be broken off. I'm not sure, but both very clearly old. Found like this, a mystery. I kind of fantasize about the idea of walking into a blacksmith shop in the 1800s or the 1700s and seeing things like this freshly forged, hanging on the wall or in buckets, and you can kind of go around and pick out what you want. Hammer blows in the background. I don't know. It's always seemed interesting to me. We'll throw these in the bag and see what else we can find here. Well, it is currently the end of August 2022 here in Vermont, and over the last month we've had hardly any rain. very, very dry. All of the streams are low, and I'm actually kneeling in a dry runoff bed. I don't think there's always water in this, but there certainly isn't any right now. And I got a fairly nice target, high 80s on the metal detector, and you can see the amount of stones I had to pull out of here. Down here, in the very bottom, was what I believe is another copper coin. I don't know if, well, we can speculate later how this wound up here. I'm gonna try to get this cleaned up and see if we can identify it. You can see it resembles a coin that has been underwater. It has this orange color to it. Another rough one, I'm afraid, but I can recognize this one, and it's quite a bit more modern. Perhaps you can see with shining the light on sideways here, there's a left-facing bust. You can see Lady Liberty's nose over here. This side is pretty much smooth, but if you were to see anything, it would say 1 cent, because this is a US large cent. It's not the earliest of designs, but middle of the 1800s would be my guess. And you know, I'm not sure exactly when folks stopped living here, but it makes sense that they were here at the end of the 1700s up until about the middle of the 1800s, and this would have also belonged to them. If this was running water, maybe they were coming down washing clothes, maybe they were just fetching water. Who knows how this may have fallen out of a pocket into this tiny little runoff stream. Even though it's not in great shape, still very happy to have found it. Well, right up here on my right, up on the hill, is the primary home foundation, and I'm down here next to what I think was probably a barn, or at least some stables were here, because I'm finding a lot of horseshoes and horse-related items. But I got a target on my metal detector right here that was very similar to those horseshoes. I dug it out, and it is something I've only found just a few of in my days of metal detecting, but something I'm super excited about. You can see down here in the hole, I pulled it out. I actually grabbed a hold of it, and I knew almost instantly what it was. And as you can see here, it is a rather small and delicate stirrup. The only 2 stirrups I've ever found were probably this much bigger, quite a bit bigger. I don't really know the significance of a small, kind of fragile stirrup. Is it for a smaller person, a smaller horse? I don't happen to know that information, but I do know that I'm excited about finding this. Now, obviously, folks still use stirrups today, but this one is not a modern one. This is early 1800s, I would guess. It seems to be hand-forged, probably made not too far away from here. So when I have the time, if the landowner allows me to take this today, I will more than likely put this on a brass wire wheel, get all of the iron nodules off, put some oil on it, and it should look just about like it did the day it was made. So cool. An old horse stirrup. Maybe the other one's around here somewhere. Let's find out. Well, I'm back in this dry snow runoff stream bed, and there's just stuff everywhere. There's pieces of pottery and glass. It really makes me wonder what this looks like during a normal time of rain. If there's always just water flowing through here, or what the deal is. But I've got another okay target. I dug it up, and it wound up being another item from the later part of the occupancy here. Folks who watch my videos regularly probably know what that is already. This is just one of several parts that look just like this that were part of the mechanism of an umbrella, or more than likely a parasol. You can imagine the wires that gave the umbrella its shape were all attached to this point, and there was one of these that stayed put, and there was one of these that slid up and down, and there were several more that all look very similar to this, but they all had different jobs. And one question I get all the time is, why do I find so many of these? It's not an uncommon find whatsoever. And you have to imagine the ladies of the time. They were wearing way too many layers of clothing than were necessary, especially up here in the mountains. And if they were out on a hot, sunny day like today, a parasol to give them some shade would have been welcomed. And who knows, you lean it up against a tree and forget about it. And then here I am a couple hundred years later finding it. Kind of cool. Well, the day is kind of winding down here, and one of the last things I usually do is metal detect in the road. And it's sometimes hit or miss because this road is still used by the landowner on their four-wheeler and dirt bike, so there's lots of modern stuff right here. But the folks from the 1700s used this too, and they were riding horses and were in wagons, and because of the bumps that are associated with that, things would oftentimes fall out of their pockets, off the wagon, and sometimes I had pretty good luck. And I just got like a 75 target. I thought maybe it was going to be a shell casing. I pulled it out. I thought it was a button, but it isn't. It's an Indian head penny. That's a surprise. Quite a bit more modern than that British coin we found earlier. And it just goes to show you just absolutely never know what you're going to find out here, especially in the road, a place that people have been using since the 1700s. Can't read the date. It's likely from the end of the 1800s, maybe the early 1900s, but we'll call this a good note to end the day on. I'm going to get everything out of my bag and we'll take a look at it all. All right, folks, well, I needed that. It's been a long time since I found stuff from the colonial period. I've been finding a lot of stuff from like the 1920s, which is fun, but there's something special about finding things just about as old as you can here in Vermont. That old copper and the stirrup made my week, made my month. I've got it all laid out in a stone over here. Let's take a look at it. Okay, and here are the treasures for the day. In the way back, we have our curlicue piece of iron. I'm not sure what that was for. I'm going to guess some kind of hanger. Our stirrup, which I'm in love with. I love finding old pieces of horse tack like that. Our interesting buckle, bridle rosette. Would you believe I actually found a second fragment of giant crotal bell, and it's a different one. They don't fit together, unfortunately. 2 old spoons, 1 iron, 1 pewter, a rivet, handful of buttons, and our parasol slider, and then out front, our coins. The large cent with an unknown date. As of right now, an unknown, I'm guessing British coin. It seems to have a King George on the front. And then in the center, a little Indian head. A little out of place, but I was happy to find it. Really great stuff, indicative of farmers up here at the end of the 1700s. All right, well, I've got a long hike out of the mountains today, but next week I will more than likely be right back up here again looking for more treasures lost by the folks that used to live up here. Hopefully you'll join me then for another adventure up here in the mountains of Vermont. See you then.